Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Days of Our Lives, July 30th, 2025. So we start off with Holly and Maggie. So they're just catching up on everything thus far, and they were talking about the baby and Sophia and Tate and how it's affecting Tate. That he's having a hard time dealing with the baby being given up for adoption. So Sophia, they're saying Sophia really, she did it for the best reasons possible, that baby would be in a better environment than if the baby was to be raised by Sophia and Tate. So they're just talking about how it's affecting both of them. Sophie Sarah comes in, and she overhears a conversation, and she also talks about how it is definitely hard, and that she talked to Brady and how it's affecting them, and knowing that they didn't get to meet the baby and all of that. So at some point, Holly goes to meet Tate, right? And then Sarah and Maggie begin to talk. So Sarah tells Maggie, because Maggie is coming back from her vacation, she had to cut it short because of what happened with Holly and Ari. So I don't know. I know that Holly is her granddaughter, but how is Ari her niece? I know she's a Horton, but Maggie was just a Horton by marriage. So how is Ariana related to Maggie? Let me know in the comments. But Sarah was speaking to her about that, as well as what's been going on with her and Xander. And she tells Maggie that Xander allowed her to see their daughter. However, they did come to a great custody arrangement, and they also came to a conclusion on their marriage and that they're legally separated. And she said her and Xander came in there with the right pure intentions, that they were gonna make it to the end of it, right? And it's just so bittersweet, but at the same time she feels free about the decision. But I have a really hard feeling that she does not really feel free, because they are going to make their way back to each other. As toxic as it is, they're going to get their way back to each other. Day one of Johnny's trial has come to an end, and Johnny and EJ are talking, and Johnny is kind of upset about the fact that EJ railroaded his grandfather. And he said that, look, he had to make sure to put a reasonable doubt that somebody else caused him to get shot in the first place. It's not personal, it's just the law, right? So anyways, Johnny has had enough, and he leaves, and then he talks to Belle, because Belle is saying he did a good job, and it went really well. But he doesn't see it that way, because he's upset at how Belle railroaded him in the opening statement, trash talk him and his family, and how could she be so callous to her nephew. And she said, look, as much as you're doing a good job to defend your son, I'm also doing a good job to uphold the law. And at the end of the day, like, I love my nephew and I want to see him exonerated, but I have to still do my job as much as you. So he's upset about it all, and she leaves because there's a lot going on her part, and he's sorry about how he talked to her, how it's a lot going on. And then she said, yeah, with especially my mom. So he said, I'm glad she has you to lean on, you can also lean on me. And she said, no, this is not the time or place for it, right? But I'm just saying, again, this is just uneasy, because they are canoodling together, they have a relationship together, and it's on opposite sides, and then they're both related to the defendants. It's just a whole mess. Sophia's back at her place, and Tate is texting her about if she heard back from the adopted parents. He doesn't want to be a bother, but he just want to know what's going on. So she said, Tate, you need to let this go, for the both of our sakes, right? So she's in the room on the bed, and her mother comes in barging in and said, look, like, you need to get up, you can't stay in the house all the time. And she said, I just given birth, I need some rest, I need to recover. And to me, like, even though Sophia gave birth weeks back, I think Sophia's mom is out of pocket for really saying, when I gave birth to you, I was back at work. And I'm saying that it's you, Mrs. Choi. At the end of the day, every woman is different. And, you gotta give them grace. Like, how dare you say that to your daughter? Like, she just given birth. Like, how can you treat her this way, right? So she's saying, like, she's upset because, again, she and her husband didn't get to meet the baby, their grandchild. And Tate is also furious, he didn't get to meet the baby as well. So she's harping on her, And as much as I'm not a fan of Sophia, I don't think she deserved that treatment from her mom. And she was right to say, look, you have all this empathy for everybody else except for me, who has carried this child for 9 months, had to do it alone in Chicago and everything. Like, what about me? Like, I'm also dealing with a lot of emotions. So, it brought her back to earth and humble her. And she said, I'm sorry for harping on you like that. You know, I know as a parent, your heart is outside your body, and you'll always want to do what's best for your child. And you're still my child, and I still want to do right by you, and I still care about you, right? So they had a good moment, and she can tell that Sophia was not feeling well. She's feeling warm, and she said, we need to go to the hospital. Maybe it could be infection. So she said, no, I'm fine. And she snapped at her mom, and she said, what's gotten into you? So she said, I'm okay, nothing to worry about. So she said, no, I don't take no for an answer. So she brings her to the hospital, right? Against Sophia's wishes. Because, Sophia doesn't want to really get checked up. She already said she got checked up in Chicago, making up excuses. But her mom wasn't buying it. So Holly meets up with Tate, who is still bummed out about not meeting the baby, and she checks in on him, and she can tell that he's still upset about how Sophia went about it, and she said, like, look, just as much as Sophia has a right to process her feelings, however, you also have a right to process your feelings as well. I know it's a lot on you, and you definitely felt like you should have met the baby, and I feel bad because I was the reason why that didn't happen. He said, don't blame yourself. You and Ari were in an accident, were in a having an incident, and I was where I needed to be, so I'm not angry at you for all of that, right? But she understand that he also felt a type of way that he didn't get to meet his daughter, right? So anyways, she said that she's not going to the college in France because she wants to be closer to Tate, and her mom and Eric seem to be all right, and she only wanted to do that to get away from him, Sophia, the baby, everything else. But now that things have resolved and the baby's adopted, she wants to work on the relationship. So Tate was advising her against this and saying, no, go ahead and go for it. But in the end, she said she wants to stay there, and he's happy about it because he's going through a lot and he really needs her support, right? They're glad that Doug is out of town and that she doesn't have to go through this kidnapping scenario again. And the money that he put up for her rescue is impounded by the police, and he won't be getting it back for a while, so hopefully get it soon. And that was really it with them. So Chanel is having lunch with her mom because, again, business is slow today, and she's glad for it because she's distracted by what's going on with Johnny's trial. And Paulina is hoping for the best, but she's also saying she doesn't want EJ to railroad her daughter in this mess and implicate her in his shooting. And she said, a video can't really prove all of that. But she said, yeah, but it's on the public discourse now, and that can still be used, So she's worried about if Johnny is exonerated, what it's going to mean for her. So Chanel is assuring her that, look, it's all going to work out fine. He's just going to do what he has to do for his son and all of that, right? At some point, Johnny does come over there. He's gone from the trial, and she asked him how it went, and he said that it went well, apart from the fact that his aunt Belle, I guess what the word he said, eviscerated him, and his dad railroaded his grandpa Roman. But otherwise, from that, it okay. So she said, let's go to the pub, celebrate. So Paulina said, for the sake of her testifying at the next day of the trial, she's gonna sit this one out, right? So he said, you don't have to go through this. But she said, no, just know that I'm praying for you and for all of us, right? So Johnny and Chanel go up to the pub, and they see Tate and Holly, and they're just catching up with each other. And Tate asks how's the trial. He heard from his grandpa Roman that it went well so far. So Johnny said, apart from my dad railroading him, everything went fine. And he said, he didn't seem like he was affected. He just wanted to know that the best outcome is that you're going to get free. He also asked Tate about the adoption, how it went, because he heard that Sophie had the baby and everything. So Tate is trying to play it off that it was okay. And they asked Holly about how she's feeling after the kidnapping, and they're just glad that her and Ari are both okay. And that was really it. They're just catching up. So at some point, Johnny and Chanel are talking amongst each other. They can tell that Tate is upset about the adoption. Johnny's thinking maybe the baby is not being raised in Salem, so all of that probably affecting him. and he's just surprised every time that Tate forgave him for, him not trying to adopt their baby, and also Chanel. And they said, look, it's water on the bridge. We can move forward. I just really want you to be exonerated, be free, so that we can move on. We're in a good place. So, they're just really talking amongst each other about the trial. And, she's kind of regretting bringing Susan into this because, again, her testimony or her psychic ability, it can't be used in court, so it's just a waste of time. But her heart was in the good place. So yeah, that was really it, them catching up and connecting. Yeah. So Belle talks to Paulina because Paulina is saying, like, look, if you're talking to me about the child, Johnny already filled me in. And she said, no, it's not about that. So she's telling her that, look, I want to tender my resignation as DA of Salem. So she's saying, like, look, why? Because, of EJ and everything. So she said, no, it's not really because of EJ. It's just that I'm closely connected to Johnny, and I just really don't want to go through this anymore. So she said, look, I wish that I could have done something about it, but right now you're stuck in this position because of what EJ did and all of that. And I don't see why you're in a relationship with him. Like, if anything, if this affects your relationship with him, I'm all happy for this because you could do so much better than him and all that. So she was just trash talking him and, whatever with that, right? So, anyways, she did convince Belle to stay on the case, and Belle said, yeah, I'm gonna stay on the case, and try to do my best by Johnny, right? EJ comes back home, he's having a drink, it's been a long day, and Susan is there, and Susan has a bone to pick with him because of how he's trying to go about things with Johnny's case, and how he's trying to implicate Chanel in the shooting. And he said, she's innocent. She says she's innocent, she wouldn't hurt a fly. So it's like, you didn't hear the nasty things she said to me. You can't really swear for her. So she said, I really, that's just, hearsay and just her talking. I don't think she's gonna really take a gun and really commit the deed. So anyways, he find it hard to believe, but they're going back and forth. And she's just saying, you when I prayed for you in the coma and you said you was gonna turn over and you leave, and you're still the same person, all of that. So they're just going really back and forth, mother and son banter. That's really it. And at some point she had like something was bothering her, and she's saying, like, your dad is there behaving like your dad Stefano. And then she starts saying, Stefano's presence is being felt. So I don't know if they're trying to bring back Steph. If they're trying to do that again, I'm just really annoyed by that already. So Mrs. Troy brings Sophia to the hospital. Turns out nothing is wrong with her, no infection, nothing like that. So Sarah takes a chance to, like, question her about the charts, and that her uterus is contracting a lot. I don't know if she said it was is not contracting as much as it should be, because she's saying it seems as if you gave birth weeks ago than recently, and also you were predicted to have a boy, but then you said you had a girl, and Brady said that you actually had a girl. So what's really going on? So she caught her at the moment, and she's saying, like, okay, what's really going on? Is the baby in danger? So she says to her, I know my rights, confidentiality wise and everything. So what's the problem now? So she said, the problem is that, things are not really adding up, and you're not really telling me the full story. So if the baby's not in harm, you need to, like, tell me what's going on. So she tells her that, the baby's safe, and that, he's in a good environment, and that's all it is, right? So they were going further into conversation, but her mom came in. So she tells her mom that, look, nothing is wrong with me, no infection, so we can go about our ways. So then she said, if you want to talk to me about any depression, or if there's any intermittent bleeding, anything like that, you can always come back to me, right? So she said, no, that would be all. So of course, that was really it. But hopefully this storyline just wrap up, because it's just really annoying now with Sophia. But let me know your thoughts on today's episode. Comment below your thoughts. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys tomorrow.